Hi everyone and welcome back. In this video, we're going to take everything we've learned about REST API and start putting it into practice by building a simple Python script that actually interacts with an API. Up until now, we've talked about concepts like requests, responses, status codes, and how APIs behave. But in the real world, the goal is to automate these interactions. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. We'll be using the requests library in Python, which is one of the most popular and easiest ways to work with REST APIs. It allows us to send HTTP requests, receive responses, and handle data in a clean and readable way. Even if you're new to Python, you'll see that the structure is very straightforward once you understand the flow. In this demo, we're going to walk through the process step by step. We'll start by importing the requests library and defining the API endpoint we want to work with. From there, we'll look at how to include optional elements like headers and authentication, depending on what the API requires. Then we'll move on to sending an actual request, for example, a GET or POST, and see how the API responds. We'll check the response status code, read the returned data, which is usually in JSON format, and finally look at how to handle errors in a clean and controlled way so our script behaves reliably. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of how to construct a Python script that communicates with a REST API from start to finish. And more importantly, you'll be able to take this structure and apply it to any API you work with in the future. So let's get started. Before we jump into the code, it's important to understand that calling a REST API from Python isn't just about writing a few lines and hoping it works. There's actually a clear structure and sequence of steps that we need to follow every time we interact with an API. At a high level, we always start by importing the necessary library, in this case, the requests library. Then we define the API endpoint we want to talk to. Depending on the API, we might also need to include headers or authentication. After that, we send the request, receive the response, check the status code to understand what happened, and finally process the data that comes back, which is usually in JSON format. And of course, we always want to handle errors properly so our script behaves in a predictable way. Now, instead of just talking about these steps in theory, the best way to understand them is to actually see them in action. For this demo, we're going to use a public API called JSON Placeholder. This is a free open API designed specifically for testing and learning. The reason we're using it is because it doesn't require authentication, it's very reliable, and it returns clean, predictable JSON data, which makes it perfect for demonstrations like this. What this does is return a sample post object, basically a piece of data that includes things like an ID, a title, and some content. So instead of dealing with something complex, we can focus on understanding how the request works and how to handle the response. So with that in mind, I'm not going to be writing the script from scratch line by line. Instead, I've already prepared the full script and we're going to go through it together step by step. The reason for that is simple. It saves time and allows us to focus on what really matters, which is understanding how each part of the code works and how it fits into the overall flow of calling a REST API. So we start by importing the request library. This library gives us an easy way to send HTTP requests from Python, such as get, post, put, and delete. In this script, we'll use it to send a request to a REST API and receive the response. Without importing this library first, Python would not know what requests.get means later in the code. Here, we define a variable called URL and we store the API endpoint inside it as a string. This is the exact address that our Python script will send the request to. In this case, we are using the JSON placeholder API, and specifically we are requesting /posts/1, which means we want to retrieve the post with the ID of 1. Storing the URL in a variable makes the script cleaner and easier to manage. For example, if we want to call a different endpoint later, we only need to update this one line. This is the line where the actual API call happens. We use requests.get to send an HTTP GET request to the URL we defined earlier. The result of that request is stored in the variable response. This variable now contains everything the server sent back to us, including the status code, the response headers, and the data itself. So from this point onward, we can inspect the response and decide what to do next. Here, we check the HTTP status code returned by the server. Specifically, we're checking whether the status code is 200, which means OK. In other words, the request was successful and the server returned the requested resource. This is a very important step because we should not assume that every request succeeds. Before trying to read or process the returned data, we first confirm that the server responded successfully. If the status code is 200, we then move on to this line. The response.json method converts the JSON data returned by the API into a Python dictionary. This is very useful because JSON is one of the most common data formats used in REST APIs, and converting it into a Python data structure makes it much easier to work with. After this line, the variable data holds the API response in a format we can access using keys like ID and title. This line simply prints a message to let us know that the request worked. It's not required for the API call itself, but it's helpful for clarity, especially during learning or debugging. It makes the output easier to understand when we run the script. Now we start reading specific values from the returned data. Here we access the ID field from the data dictionary and print it. This uses an F string, which is a clean and readable way to include variables inside printed text. Since data is now a Python dictionary, we can retrieve the value of ID using data ID. This line works the same way as the previous one, but now we are accessing the title field from the returned JSON data. It prints the title of the post that was returned by the API. So at this stage, we are not just confirming that the request succeeded, we are also extracting and displaying useful information from the API response. This else block is used in case the request does not return a status code of 200. So if something goes wrong, maybe the resource doesn't exist, the server is unavailable, or another error occurs, the script will move into this section instead. This is part of basic error handling, and it makes the script more reliable because it doesn't just fail silently. If the request was unsuccessful, this line prints the actual status code returned by the server. That helps us understand what happened. For example, if the script gets a 404, that means the resource was not found. If it gets a 500, that means there was a server-side problem. So instead of just saying something failed, this line gives us a useful clue for troubleshooting. Let's run the script and examine the output. As you can see, we had a successful request, so let's break down what's actually happening here. The first line, request was successful, comes directly from our script. This tells us that the API returned a status code of 200, which means everything worked as expected. The request reached the server processed it correctly, and it sent back a valid response. So at this point, we know that our API call was successful and that it's safe to work with the returned data. This value comes from the JSON data returned by the API. Remember, we requested the endpoint/posts/1, which means we asked for the post with ID 1. So it makes sense that the API responded with an object where the ID field is 1. This confirms that we are receiving the correct resource from the API. This is the title field from the JSON response. It's part of the data stored in the API, and we accessed it using data title in the script. Even though the text itself might not be meaningful, since this is just test data from JSON placeholder, the important thing is that we successfully received structured data from the API and converted it into a Python dictionary and extracted specific fields from it and displayed them in a readable format. Alright, now let's move on to the next example, where we'll add headers to our REST request. So the first new thing we're introducing here is headers. Headers are used to send additional information to the server along with the request. In this case, we're using the accept header to tell the server what kind of response we expect back. By setting accept application/JSON, we're explicitly saying, I want the response in JSON format. Now, in this particular API, JSON is already the default, so this header isn't strictly required. But in real-world APIs, this is very important because some APIs can return data in multiple formats, like XML or JSON. Here's where we actually attach the headers to the request. Previously, we were just passing the URL. Now we're adding an extra parameter, headers equals headers, which includes our header dictionary in the request. So now the server receives not just the request for the resource, but also extra context about how we want that response to be formatted. So instead of checking the status code with an if statement like we did earlier, here we're simply printing it directly. This is useful during testing because it allows us to quickly see whether the request was successful or not without adding extra logic. Finally, we print the entire JSON response. So instead of extracting specific fields like ID or title, we're displaying the full response as a Python dictionary. This is helpful when you want to quickly inspect the structure of the data returned by the API. Now that we've briefly gone through the code, let's go ahead and run it and take a look at the output. The first thing we see is 200, which is the HTTP status code returned by the server. Just like before, this tells us that the request was successful. The server received our request, including the headers, processed it correctly, and returned the expected response, so right away we know everything worked as intended. Next, we see the full JSON response printed as a Python dictionary. This contains all the data returned by the API for the post we requested. You can see several fields here: user ID, the ID of the user who created the post. Next is the ID of the post itself, then the title of the post, and finally the body, which is the main content of the post. So instead of picking out specific fields like we did in the previous example, here we're displaying the entire response. This is very useful when you're exploring an API for the first time and want to understand the structure of the data. Now, let's tackle the next example, where we move from just retrieving data to actually sending data to an API using a post request. Here we're pointing to a slightly different endpoint. Instead of requesting a specific post like before, we're targeting /posts, which is used for creating a new resource. This is where things get interesting. We define a variable called payload, which contains the data we want to send to the server. This is essentially the body of our post request, and it's structured as a Python dictionary. Each key value pair represents part of the data we want the API to process. In this case, a title, some content, and a user ID. Here, instead of using get, we use post because we're creating a new resource. The important part is JSON equals payload. This tells the request library to convert the payload into JSON format and automatically include the correct headers, like content type is set to application/JSON. So this line sends our data to the API in a format it understands. Just like before, we print the status code and the response body. The status code will tell us whether the creation was successful, and the JSON response will typically include the data that was created, often with an ID assigned by the server. Now that we've walked through the code, let's go ahead and run the script and take a look at the output. The first thing we see is 201, which is the HTTP status code returned by the server. This is slightly different from what we saw earlier. A 201 status code means created, which tells us that the post request was successful and that a new resource was created on the server. So in this case, not only did the request work, but the server actually processed our data and created a new post. Next, we see the JSON response returned by the API. If you look closely, you'll notice that it contains all the data we sent in the payload, the title, the body, and the user ID. But there's also something new: an ID field. This ID is assigned by the server and it represents the newly created resource. In this case, it's 101, which makes sense because JSON placeholder already has posts from 1 to 100, so it assigns the next available ID. It's worth mentioning that JSON placeholder is a fake API, which means it simulates the creation of data but doesn't actually store it permanently. So even though we receive a 201 response and a new ID, the data isn't really saved on the server. But for learning and testing purposes, it behaves exactly like a real API would, which is why it's perfect for this kind of demo. Now let's move on to the final example, where we focus on handling errors properly when calling a REST API. Up until now, our scripts assumed that everything works fine, but in real-world scenarios, things can go wrong. The server might be down, the request might time out, or the API might return an error. So we need a way to handle these situations cleanly. We start by wrapping our API call inside a try block. This allows us to attempt the request and then catch any errors that might occur during execution. Here we send the GET request just like before, but now we've added a timeout equals 10. This means the request will wait up to 10 seconds for a response. If the server doesn't respond within that time, Python will raise a timeout exception instead of waiting indefinitely. This is a very useful addition. Instead of manually checking the status code, raise for status will automatically raise an exception if the server returns a 400s or 500s. So if the request fails, we don't need to write extra if statements. The script will jump straight to the appropriate except block. If no errors occur, we move on to converting the response into JSON and printing it. So this part only runs if the request was successful. Now we define different except blocks to handle different types of errors. This catches HTTP related errors, such as 404 or 500 responses. These are errors returned by the server itself. This handles situations where the client cannot connect to the server at all. For example, if there's no internet connection or the server is unreachable. This catches timeout errors, which occur when the server takes too long to respond. This is a catch-all block that handles any other request-related exceptions that weren't caught by the previous ones. Now that we've gone through the code and understand how error handling is implemented, let's go ahead and run the script and examine the output. So in this case, we receive a JSON response, which means the request was successful. Even though we didn't explicitly print the status code this time, we know that everything worked correctly because no exception was raised and the script did not jump into any of the except blocks, and we were able to successfully convert and print the response data. This tells us that the API returned a valid response, most likely with a status code of 200. So you might notice that none of the error messages we defined were triggered, and that's exactly what we want in this scenario. The try block executed successfully from start to finish, the request was sent, the server responded within the timeout, and the raise for status function did not detect any errors. And finally, the JSON data was processed normally. Since no exceptions occurred, Python skipped all the except blocks and simply printed the data. That's it folks for this video, and I hope it was informative for you. If you found it helpful, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our future tutorials and tech insights. If you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to drop a comment below. And to read more about this topic, be sure to check out my blog. You'll find the link in the description below. And remember, consistency and hands-on practice are key to success. So stay curious, stay inspired, and until next time, peace.